I've spent most of my watch collecting journey with one end goal in mind, or grail if you will, and that's the Rolex Explorer 36, specifically the reference 14270. The obsession with this adventure tool watch began with the Urban Gentry or TGV, and it really hasn't gone away since. For the past 8 to 9 years, I've bought and sold a multitude of so-called Rolex Explorer homages and alternatives. None of them stuck, and I wasn't going to drop close to 10 grand Australian on a Rolex. Not at that stage in my life yet anyways, and besides I'm cheap. But this $600 alternative is really scratching the itch. Actually, it might even be removing the desire entirely. Traska is a micro-brand that started 6 years ago in 2018 when the founder John Mack ruined his vintage below a snorkel on a beach in Vietnam. The dial flooded and the watch was pretty much done on the spot. And with that, John was inspired to create a modern adventure watch that wouldn't break the bank and, well, wouldn't break. As a result, the Traska Freediver was born after more than tripling their Kickstarter goal of $25,000. Since then, Traska has launched a variety of models, including the Commuter V3 and the Freediver V5, and two other models which I don't have, the Seafarer and the Venturer. Both are dual crowns which aren't exactly my thing, but the two models are definitely the most original and creative out of the bunch. It goes without saying that the Summiteer Dimensions is spot on, and all the credit goes to the team at Traska. The Summiteer is a watch that is very deserving of its props. 4 iterations within 5 years. That's a microbrand dedicated to consistency and improvement. The first gen of Summiteers came out in 2019, and I was aware of it back then, but based on the pictures, I wasn't impressed. It looked a little unfinished. It wasn't until the third generation that I really started becoming interested in the Summiteer, and was when it dropped down to 36mm case diameter and had a much better case finishing. Now, in its 4th iteration, which is no doubt the best version till date, let's get into why. The one thing I do like about the Summiteer V4 is that it doesn't immediately remind me of the Rolex Explorer. Not entirely anyways. I sense the inspiration for this version of the Summiteer came from another well-known brand, but a lesser known model, and that's the Omega Railmaster 36mm, reference 250452. It's almost like John and the team over there at Traska looked at the two of the best sort of three-hander adventure watches in the market and said imagine what the baby would look like, and then added their own creativity towards it. I think that sums up the Summiteer V4 pretty well. The Summiteer is your typical 369 Explorer dial with an inverted triangle at the 12. Immediately you'll notice one thing, there's a lot of depth in effect, and it's really a combination of a few features. A big part of it is due to the sector-like dial. With two concentric circles making up the inner and outer dial, the inner dial is embossed, almost carved into the dial, creating an interesting 3D glossy effect on an otherwise standard matte black dial. Where the embossed inner dial meets the outer dial, you'll find raised 3D lume plots that are thin and rectangular, and they extend all the way into the minute track. The diamond cut handset themselves are rather fitting on this dial, super sharp, and I love the sword style hands. Finally, no more Mercedes wheels. Topped with the box dome sapphire crystal, the Summiteer has done a great job paying homage with a modern Rolex Explorer style without being a direct copy. Traska has kept the case simple, very reminiscent of the Oyster case and very fitting on an adventurous style. If you didn't know, Rolex invented the Oyster case back in the early 1900s as a rough and tough case that will withstand day-to-day beatings. After all, it's the first waterproof wristwatch case in history. Staying true to inspiration, the case on the Summiteer has distinctive layers: the case back, mid-case, bezel, and glass. The case back is again quite simple, very similar to the Explorer, but with the addition of circular text with some information. The mid case is a thick, and I say thick but it's less than 10mm in height, but it looks like a whole slab with chamfered edges where the edges meet the lugs, and the drilled lugs are a nice touch. The bezel itself is thin and brushed, not polished, which is a good thing, looking at you Hamilton Khaki King. It's not all homage though, there is some innovation here. The case is treated with Traska's proprietary case hardening treatment. So instead of what you'll find on regular 316L steel, which measures around 200 HV on the Vickers hardness scale, the Traska Summiteer has a rating of 1200 HV, making it almost 6 times more scratch resistant than your everyday stainless steel. I've had mine for almost a year now and dailied it for a decent period, and there's barely a single scratch on it. For a micro brand, the bracelet on the Summiteer is actually pretty good. Obviously not Christopher Ward bracelet good, but it's not exactly that far off. It's your typical 3-link oyster style bracelet, very solid through and through, there's no doubts there. The link articulation here is awesome. Each link interacts on its own and forms the entire bracelet when screwed in together. That's a sign of a good bracelet. Seiko, please, just look around you. It tapers nicely from 20mm to 16mm. Each link is easily removed with a screwdriver, extremely user-friendly here. Even beginners are able to remove and put links back on. The clasp suffers the same lengthy clasp syndrome as the Seaward bracelet, albeit not as lengthy, but this one here is a little chunkier and less refined, I'd say. Good news, there is an on-the-fly adjustment within the clasp, which is really good to see for a watch at this price point and for a micro brand. However, it is a little annoying to operate. You have to push down on the mechanism with one hand and either push or pull the bracelet with the other. But because the links articulate so easily, it's sometimes hard to get a proper grip, not to mention the push-down mechanism can be a bit tough. All in all, it's a good bracelet, but not without my complaints. But completely serviceable at this price point. And look, I'd be surprised if Traska doesn't improve their bracelets on the next run. That's the kind of brand they are. Just an FYI, I have worn the Summiteer on the bracelet once, and that was when I filmed this review. As an adventure watch and also thanks to TGV, mainly TGV, the Summiteer has been on a NATO since the first day it arrived. It's slim, lightweight, and just extremely comfortable on my 6-inch wrist. On the OEM bracelet or an Admiral Grey NATO or even a black leather strap, the Summiteer is a strap monster and is capable of being a daily wear, dare I say even a one watch only. You don't have to worry about potentially scratching it, right? That's where the proprietary case hardening comes in. Movement is the Miyota 9000 series with no date, workhorse, reliable, and you know servicing is going to be easy and affordable. It's a modern, everyday adventure-style timepiece that doesn't break the budget and is perfect for those with smaller wrists. What more can you ask for? The Summiteer is everything I'd expect from a 36mm Rolex-inspired timepiece. It's not that, well, I know what to expect from the Explorer. I've never owned one, looked at one, or even tried one on in person, but if I did, I'd imagine the wear, comfort, and feel wouldn't be too far off from the Summiteer. And that brings me to my final point of the video. I've always been adamant about my grail. You could even call it an exit watch. The watch to end all watches. It's no secret at this point it's the Rolex Explorer 14270. Now, from a luxury watch standpoint, it's not ridiculously expensive, but it isn't exactly that affordable either. It's still a good chunk of money. And here's the key, is all that money for a relatively standard three-hander? With the Summiteer, it's got me thinking, if I'm spending close to 10 grand Australian, I'd rather spend it on something with a bit more luxurious look and feel to it. I just don't see how with the Explorer, other than the years of build-up and emotional ties to it from my part, would be worth almost 10 times the price of the Summiteer. I suppose it boils down to me, quite honestly, being afraid that it wouldn't live up to the hype. Like the Summiteer is about 1/10 of the price, but I'm getting at least 6/10 of the feel and at least 8/10 in terms of look. Granted, I've never held the 14270 in my hands, and maybe it might change things, but currently, the girl-like desire for the Rolex Explorer just simply isn't quite there anymore. To end the video, I pose a question to you as I always do. What are your thoughts? If you were in my shoes, and I'd assume at least some of you are, or even have been, you probably made a decision in the past, in similar circumstances. What was that decision? Or if you were in my shoes now, what would your decision be? I'd love to find out. Drop it in the comments below. I'll see you on the next one.